Well, welcome everybody. I'm Noah T.Y. I'm here with Sonny Garguilo and the great John Lyons. And I want to welcome everybody to the Greatest Horseman podcast. And it is very fitting to have one of the greatest horsemen here with us. And one of the things, we're going to dive into this. This is going to be just conversational. We're going to have some fun. We've been sharing a lot of stories already so far. And one of the things I want to ask about, and one of the first things I want us to discuss, because John, we were talking earlier and we were talking about like our faith and horses, and it's going to sound, it's going to be a little bit repetitive, but you were talking specifically about forgiveness and horses. And that just was like, it's a moment I will never forget. It was very, very powerful. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the horse is God's most favorite animal. I sincerely believe that, and I can show you that many, many different times in the Bible. So if we just take that statement and we say, okay, John, I'll accept that the horse is God's most favorite animal. For an example, he mentioned sheep in the Bible 714 times, mentions horses in the Bible second to sheep at 352, 56, right in that area. And then the next one comes down as cows and bulls at 85. And then dogs at 41, cats 0, right? So maybe he just doesn't think much of independent thinking. I'm not sure, but cats own us, we don't own them. So anyway, assuming that the horse is God's most favorite animal, and he's sitting there, he says, I think I'm going to design my most favorite animal. Well, he's gonna end up putting in some of the characteristics in that animal that he likes the very best, right? I mean, he would do that just as we would do it if we were going to design something that we really, really liked and loved. So he put some amazing characteristics in the horse, things that we can adapt into our own life. For an example, what is it that God offers us that is the most important thing to us in our life? Well, most of us think, well, he offers us forgiveness as Christians, or he offers us his friendship, or he offers us, forgiveness in our life and our sins. So or togetherness, that he offers us that. Yeah. Well, those aren't the most important things to us in our life. The most important thing in our life is peace. Paul said it when he was in the dungeon, when he thought he was going to be killed in a few hours in a horrible, horrible death, phenomenal amount of pain. And he turns to the other Christian sitting beside him and he says, I am at peace. And I'm at peace that surpasses all understanding, which means that it's without circumstances. He says, I'm at peace if I'm in front of kings, or I'm at peace if I'm about to be killed in the morning. I am at peace, and that is what God offers us. Well, in knowing that, that's what we would really desire most in our life. Peace, and with our parents, having peace with our parents, to be able to live with our parents in peace, to live with our kids in peace, to live without the worry of what's going to happen to us tomorrow, peace without having to worry about the bills. Are we going to be able to pay our bills? Are we going to lose our jobs? All of those different things, just to be able to live in peace. Would you not trade everything that you have in order just to live in peace? And the sad part is we won't. We won't give that up. The horse, actually, that's one of the characteristics that God put in the horse, and it becomes a tremendous training tool. Sonny and I were talking about that yesterday, and it's when you learn that what the horse wants most in his life is peace. He just wants to live in peace, but he's smarter than we are. He will trade his freedom. He'll turn over the reins to his life to somebody else, to do what they want, to do reining horse spins, to go over their jumps, to go on their trail rides, to do all of those things. He will turn over his life to us just so he can have moments of peace. We're too strong-willed for that. We want to do it our way. We ask God to help us, and then he doesn't help us quite fast enough, or we don't get the answer that we want, and then we want it back. We'll fix it. We got this, kind of an attitude. So he even put one of his characteristics that God wants us to have. He just wants us to have peace in our life. Well, the horse gives us a great example of that. And in many, many different ways, you can see that with a horse. Whenever a person is in an argument with a horse, or the horse is not doing what they want, and the person is kind of fighting back and forth with that horse, if we learn to look at that horse with a different set of eyes, and we ask ourselves, is that horse at peace? And the answer would be no, he's not at peace. He's throwing his head, maybe he's rearing up, maybe he's kicking. He's definitely not at peace. Well, I don't have to punish him, for what he's doing that we consider wrong, rearing up, kicking. I don't have to punish him for that. If I looked at him and said, he's not at peace, he doesn't want to kick, he doesn't want to rear up, he doesn't want to be afraid, he doesn't want to be nervous. And to say to him, just don't be afraid, that doesn't help, Well, just don't be nervous. Well, try that with your wife and see how that goes. So understanding that characteristic is in the horse, that the horse just wants peace. And I can look at him when he's throwing his head and he's scared to death, and I don't have to punish him for that. There's nothing I could hit him with, nothing I could do to him that would make his life more miserable than at that moment. So what I can do, if I look at him with a different set of eyes, it changes my hands, it changes how I approach that horse, it changes everything about me. All I get to do is offer him peace. I get to show him where he can relax. I get to show him where he wants to be anyway. The horse that wants to be ridden is the horse you drive by out in the pasture, and you look at that horse, that's the horse that wants to be ridden. Not the horse that when we climb on him is scared and jumping and jigging or doing all that kind of stuff, or nervous, spooking at things. The horse that wants to be ridden is that calm horse that's out in that pasture. When I bring him in, and I climb on him, then we change all of that. But if I understood that's really what the horse wants, and many, many times people have been taught, that their horse is always trying to get out of doing what they want. But many, many times the horse wants exactly what we want. We don't want his head bent around our knee. He doesn't want to bend his head around our knee. He doesn't want to be afraid. I don't want him to be afraid. He doesn't want to be nervous. I don't want him to be nervous. He doesn't want his head way up in the air. I don't want his head up in the air. He doesn't want to pull on the bit. I don't want him to pull on the bit. So most times people misunderstand their horse in such a way that they think the horse wants to do those things. He doesn't want those things. He wants to have his head straight, just go down the trail and enjoy the ride,
So I'm hearing, John, there's no such thing, because you'll hear, especially in Texas, that's an ornery horse, or that's a stubborn horse, or that's a this horse. But what I'm hearing is that's not what the horse wants to be, and really it's not what the horse is doing, it's what we're doing to that horse.
It's our influence in his life, because without that, he's just fine. He's calm, he's relaxed, he's not flying around the pasture, he's not doing that stuff, he's just fine. Anybody that says a horse is stubborn, doesn't understand the basic nature of the horse. The basic nature of the horse is adaptability, right? Sonny can take a horse and they bring him into an expo. Sonny can take that horse. And let's say this horse is 20 years old and he's tremendously head shy. He's been beaten the head every day for 20 years. And this horse is just scared to death with anything being around his head. Well, Sonny can work with him and do two things to that horse. And within an hour, 2 hours of time, that horse won't be head shy at all. Well, the first thing is the obvious. Stop hitting him in the head. Secondly, convince him you're not going to hit him in the head. And at that moment, that horse will not be head shy. All right. So in going to expos, all right, using other examples at expos, you see this horse come in with a problem. This trainer takes the horse. The horse has had the problem for multiple years. And this trainer works with this horse, and then all of a sudden, in that hour and a half, you see these miraculous changes, that the horse makes. Well, is it because of the trainer, or is it because of what God put in the horse before the trainer ever showed up? And what God put in the horse is adaptability, all right? Adaptability is changeable. It's flexible. It's yielding. All of those words would describe adaptable or changeable, wouldn't it? All of those kind of words, yielding, giving, giving up, those kind of things. Well, so the horse at any point in his life, no matter what has happened or how long it's happened, a horse can come in and we can see amazing changes in that horse in an hour and a half. Well, we know since the horse has a 90% retention rate over an 18-month period, he certainly didn't forget about 20 years of abuse or 20 years of hard knocks or whatever you want to call it, in an hour and a half. So what did that horse do? Well, God just filled him with a huge amount of adaptability, changeability, flexible, yielding, willing to change, all of those things. Well, if we look up the word stubborn, it's the opposite of that. Demanding, rigid, unchangeable, right? It's just the opposite of all of those things. Well, how can an animal be so adaptable, so changeable at any point in time in his life, yet stubborn, rigid, demanding, and wanting its own way? It's not the horse that wants his own way. It's us that want our own way. We want our things. We want our spins. We want our sliding stops. We want our lead changes. We want our trail rides. And we say to him, I don't want you to ever become afraid again the rest of your life because it scares me when you spook, and no matter what, And so God even said that he took one of the verses in the Bible. He said he when he designed the horse, he gave him their speed, their strength, and their grace, and he filled them with boundless courage. Boundless courage. When we ask a horse to go across a creek or go across something scary the first time, go by that horse-eating rock, that horse is making a life and death decision. A life and death decision because he doesn't understand getting a scratch. He doesn't understand getting a cut. He doesn't understand going to the veterinarian, and getting sewed up. He doesn't understand those things. That's a life and death decision he's making. If he steps in that creek and he lives, life is good. If he doesn't, if it goes bad, he dies. And like a bird, you walk toward that bird and it flies away. Made a life and death decision. It doesn't know what you want. And so what happens is that horse makes a life and death decision. Now the cool thing about it, he's not making that life and death decision because he wants to make it. He's doing it at somebody else's request. We're on his back. We're saying, hey, you make this life and death decision. And then, and when we see that, when we have that knowledge to know that's the decision he's making, it really becomes amazing to watch this horse, that he makes that decision, this young horse. The young horse might make that decision 5 times, on a trail ride, his first trail ride or whatever. And so, we couldn't ever do that. We could not make that decision, 5 times. Let me put it in a different way. Let's fill this room with poisonous snakes. All right. If any snake bites you, you're going to die.
Right.
Now, if you're afraid of snakes, and I ask you to walk across those snakes calmly, are you going to do it?
Right.
Probably not.
Not me.
Exactly. So, yet that horse is making that step. We're asking him to step in these poisonous snakes.
And that is so powerful. It is so powerful, and it's so easy. I'm guilty of this, of taking that for granted, that we take them because they're perfect. Left to their own devices, they're perfect. We take them out of that, and we want them to do so much. And you have to do it this way. And if you're not doing it that way, where you're a stiff horse, or you're this, or you're that, and yet we don't give them enough credit for just how amazing it is that they take one step with us on their back.
Well, think about it every day too. Every time we go with our horse, we impose on them in some way. Every time. Who else would deal with that? We wouldn't deal with that. I wouldn't deal with someone imposing on me every single day, their will. But yet when we go to grab our horse, we expect them to go out at night, go out in the day. Rain or shine, you ride. Put the saddle on, carry me. So we just, as humans, we just expect that the horse is going to, tolerate this imposing time and time and time, and they do, for the most part. So, I always say, on my Sundaysms, and I spoke to John about this morning, we're so concerned about the horse staying out of our personal space, stay out of my space. But yet every time we slide our foot into that stirrup, we're imposing on their personal space. And they're such a pure animal. God created the horse so pure and so tolerant of the human that they allow it. To me, that's the amazing part of the horse. That rain or shine, night or day, we expect them to do what we would never do. I couldn't come and wake you up at 3 a.m. and say, no, come outside, we're going to go do a 10-mile hike here.
You could try.
And it's raining. Right. So, for me, the horse, that's the really special part for me about the horse, because I always remember, and this is something else we spoke about this morning, John and I, that, I always remember that the horse never asked to be here. He never asked to carry that saddle. He never asked for that. And given the choice, like you said, hey, sis, would you like to go out in that pasture and eat that grass with your friends, or would you rather carry me around for 20 minutes or an hour or two? Of course, she's going to, pick that pasture, right? So they really don't have a choice. We don't give them that choice. Hey, you're the horse, I'm the human. I'm going to throw the saddle on your back, and today I need to do this. And you need to accept that. And when you make a mistake, you're a bad horse. When I made a mistake, I just made a mistake.
And that's normal, Sonny, that, from the very beginning, when God created Adam and Eve, and of course they ate the apple, and so God comes down, and what God said is he looked forward every day to coming down, and walking in the garden with them. And it was the highlight of his day. It was an important part of God's day to take the time, and he came down, and it said he looked forward to that. Well, then, of course, when they ate the apple, and then Adam's hiding in the bushes, right? And he's hiding in the bushes because he's embarrassed. Now, he had walked with God every day, but that's what sin does to us in our life. It makes us unworthy to be with somebody else that's more important. We walk into their office and they are the important person. We're not as good as they are. Maybe they have more money than we do, and so we're not as good as they are. Well, that's what sin does for us in our life. It embarrasses us. It makes us unworthy. Well, that's why Adam was hiding in the bushes. Well, then God confronted him and said, Adam, what have you done? And then we think that Adam blamed Eve, because he said it was Eve, the woman. Then he took his finger and he pointed it right at God. And he said, it was the woman you gave me. The problems in my life were your fault. So we've been blaming him. We don't follow the rules, but we blame him for the problems that come up to us. Well, it's the same thing that we do with the horses, Sonny, exactly what you're talking about. Rather than looking at us and saying, I need to learn more. I need to figure out more. I need to maybe break this lesson down easier for the horse and present this in a different way to the horse. The problems in my life are your fault, horse. You're the stubborn. You're the bad person here. You're the bad situation. If I just had a different horse, I would be better. If I had just a different wife, You know, if I just had a different job, if God would just answer that prayer, you know, then my life would be okay, you know. And then, so it goes on from there. But God, you know, as he designed that horse, he put some of the coolest characteristics that we can adapt to our own lives. When we were talking about Zip earlier and when he went blind and stuff, and of course, you know, I love that. I love that horse, and I spent hours upon hours and with that horse, and I traveled with him for 23, 24 years. He was just a part of my life. I spent more time with that animal than any other person on earth. And so when he went blind, of course, I took him to every university, every eye specialist I could find. You know, what happened is anything that we can do, just like any normal person who loved their animal would do. So I end up, I think, somewhere in Massachusetts at a university up there, and this eye specialist is going to come look at him. And I get to the university, I go to the horse facility, and there's like nobody there, and I don't know why. You know, I don't remember why, but maybe it's a holiday. Well, anyway, so I'm there, and here comes this eye surgeon and doctor. He comes out wheeling this cart, all kinds of different eye stuff on it. So he starts testing him, and he's using one instrument, then the next. He's got 10 different tests he's doing minimum on my horse. And finally, and he didn't speak very, very good English, he says to me, he says, "John, he's blind. And there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing." He said, "But I don't want you to ever feel sorry for him." He said, "Because he never felt sorry for himself." He said, you know, when something really bad happens in a person's life, they go, maybe it's a car accident, maybe it's not their fault, whatever it is, you know, but they get physically damaged really, really bad. You know, they might go through the emotions of the physical therapy, but maybe for 6 months they go through the poor me, why did this happen to me syndrome, you know? And he said their healing doesn't really start until they get through that, you know, the poor me, or why did God do this to me? And he didn't. But and he said, Zip, the horse, never went through that. He said at 19 years of age, he figures that every horse goes blind at 19 years of age. And this is just a normal part of living. He said, so don't you ever feel sorry for him, because he never felt sorry for himself. Holy mackerel. One thing, you know, how could I ever have an opportunity to learn that kind of a lesson, you know, and learn it from a horse. I mean, learn that from a horse, you know, that bad things are going to happen to me, but it's part of living. It's just part of being here. Yeah. And so if something like that bad happens to me, then Zip taught me how to deal with it. Hopefully I learned that from my horse. Hopefully I learned things that God wants me to learn, because he says, don't think about the past, don't dwell on the past, and you can't do anything about the future. Live today. Today, you have no idea what your future is. Your past is your past. He says, whatever sin you have done, I have separated you from that sin as far as the east is from the west. You know, and he could have chose north and south. But north and south, you know, if you go north far enough, you're going to end up going south. But you can go east forever. East never meets west. So he chose the right words. He chose the right directions. He's trying to tell me that he takes that sin, whatever I did, whatever wrong thing I did, and he says, it doesn't make any difference what wrong thing you did.
And how was the quality of Zip's life after that? Like, what did that look like?
It was outstanding. I did a demonstration in front of 8,000 people, and I was scared to death. It was at the Midwest Horse Fair And so it was during the night performance, and it was raining outside. I'm going to drive Zip in a carriage, all right? So I'm going to drive him in. Now, all of these gorgeous horses are surrounding me, great big beautiful Grand Prix jumping horses, and they're getting ready to go into the arena. They're setting up the jumps and stuff, and the jumps are gorgeous, and these people look so magnificent, on their horses and stuff. They're going in there for 8 minutes. 8 to 10 minutes is all they have to be in that arena. I have to go in there and entertain people, 8,000 people for an hour, with this little, dumpy, short Appaloosa that doesn't look beautiful, doesn't look elegant, So I am so nervous, I'm just about to wet my pants. I'm thinking, I don't know if I can do this. So I go in there. I do all these things. I drive him, I saddle him, I ride him bridleless, I ride him, do all of these different things with him, just amazing different things that he did. And when I get all done, I have him laying down, and I'm laying against him, excuse me. And so, anyway, so I'm talking to the audience, and I tell him that, a week earlier, 2 weeks earlier, he went blind. They had no idea, that he was blind. I could call him. I could have him in the arena, and he would lope to me, run to me, all of that. Well, now he's blind. And if there were no sound system, then he could pick up on the sound where the sound was coming from, and he could come to me. He could run to me. Which was amazing when you think about it. Blind people don't run very well. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of balance to be able to run once you're blind. And so anyway, but now we're in a huge arena. 8,000 people are up there. The sound system is coming from everywhere. And I call him. And so what he does is he picks a direction. He just arbitrarily picks a direction. And I go, and then he'll pick another direction and another direction. And pretty soon he'll come to me.
That's awesome.
By the time I finished that demonstration, I did everything with him but have him come over jumps. And I stopped that when he was blind. And, but there wasn't a dry eye, in that arena. The impressive part was here's an average horse. He's like me, average. Just an average person, normal person, no special talents, nothing special about me, nothing special about him. But he showed us what the average person can do, what the average horse can do. He wasn't the best bred horse in the world. He wasn't designed just for one job. What he was an average horse that did extraordinary things, because of the relationship, because of what God put inside that horse.
So let me follow up on that. You mentioned that you had spent more time with Zip than anybody else. I can relate to that. I know there's a lot of people listening because he's no longer with us, right?
Right.
Tell us a little bit, if you're comfortable sharing, tell me a little bit about that and what that felt like, because when you give that much to a horse, and I feel like they always give more than we can give to them, but it's an investment. And a lot of, especially non-horse people, they don't understand what that's like when it feels like that's being ripped or pulled away from you. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Loss is loss. Whether it's a dog that you have lost, whether it's a horse, whether it's It's certainly not in the same category, a child. Jesus said as he walked into town and he saw this mother, this funeral procession coming out of town, and here's her son laying on that mat. And he turned to the disciples and he said, there is no grieving. There is no greater sorrow. There is no grieving like a mother's love for her child. So we can't, and we should never compare our loss in our life with our animals compared to a mother or a father's loss of a child. So we can't compare that. But grieving is grieving. Hurt is hurt. Loss of a loved one, whether it's a four-legged loved one or any loss in our life, is hard. Now the loss teaches us, hopefully teaches us something, and hopefully what that loss teaches us is to value the life that's in front of us. It's to value the relationships that we still have, the chances that we still have, to make things right, with people we should have made things right with, and again, coming back to the Bible, Jesus says, leave your offering on the footsteps of the church and go, apologize, go make things right. Go ask for forgiveness for things that you've done wrong, with some other person. Make that relationship right, and then bring your offering to the church. Because your offering, what he was symbolizing is the offering is not as important as the relationship. You can't buy those good feelings. You can't buy cleanliness. You can't buy, when you've hurt somebody else, you can't buy that back by taking an offering somewhere else or giving something to somebody else. You have to go to that person. Well, the loss, having animals is good because it teaches us that we're going to lose. We're going to lose our own life. We're going to lose them, and we're going to lose people that we love. And people that we love, what we need to do is go at least do the very best that we can, to make that relationship right, to clean it up, to do the best we can, to apologize, and maybe that's all we can do, is just to apologize and ask for their forgiveness and let it go at that. Maybe that's all we can do, but that's what we should do. So that's what we should learn from the loss of our animals. Loss is loss, hurt is hurt. People are going to mourn that loss in many different ways. One person works harder. One person dives into something else, and one person grieves. We all grieve differently, and we can't say, well, you don't really feel the loss because you're not grieving the way I grieve.
Right.
That's not right, nor is it fair to that person. So losing Zip hurt. Luckily or unlucky, I've lost other animals that that I loved. And so it taught me that. It taught me, hopefully when I lost him, that I could look back and say I did the very best I could with the time that I had. I lost a horse named Dream, a stallion. I loved the stallion. And I had him at the same time that I had Zip. And one day I'm riding up at the top of the mountains. I'm up on a mountaintop in Colorado. Absolutely gorgeous day, beautiful day. I'm in some of the prettiest country, I think, in the whole world. I'm in meadows, big meadows. It's like a big grass arena to ride in. I'm on these trails. I'm all by myself. I'm with my horse, and this horse, I love this horse. And the next weekend, I'm going to be in Salt Lake City doing a symposium and then doing a long run of symposiums. So here, I'm working on him. You know, I'm working him, I'm getting him better at his stops, at his turns, I'm loping, working on speeding up and slowing down, I'm working him. I might as well have been in a manure pit. You know, I might as well have been in a manure pit and not looked up at all. You know, I missed everything that I did, you know, that day, where I was at that moment and that time. And that was the last time I rode him. We ended up in a trailer wreck, you know, going and ended up losing him on that trailer wreck. Now, if I would have known that was going to be my last ride, I certainly wouldn't have done what I did. I certainly would not have I would have dropped the reins and said, let's enjoy the trees, the mountains, and I missed all of that.
John, how long ago did you lose Zip?
23 years ago.
What's amazing to me is 23 years ago you lost Zip, and to this day, in this interview, you spoke of him, and you teared up, and
Yeah.
I mean, you loved him that much.
Yeah, he's that part of my life, you know.
I mean, I think it's beautiful. I think it's
Yeah.
it shows how these horses affect us, you know, and how they're part of our life and how we become one with them. And you know, we spoke about this, John, you and I, that they and we both agreed, because I had a Sonnyism when we talked about it, but you also said something about it too, that the horse kind of finds what the human needs and gives the human what they need. So we actually were speaking about it's okay not to ride if you don't want to ride. You remember the conversation, John?
Right.
It's okay not to, you know, if somebody's getting what they need from that, that's how amazing the horse is. That the horse finds that hole, whatever that hole may be, that need that you have, and he finds that hole, and he fills it, whether it be, hey, this person, you know, riding his horse fills the hole for him. Like when I go out, if I'm having a bad day, or you know, my cancer number jumps up or something like that, I get on my horse, I go out on trail, and I'll just ride, her and I. And that makes me feel like there's nothing else in the world is wrong. I'm having the greatest time. It doesn't matter what's going on around me. Someone might not even need to ride. Maybe just come down and brush their horse. We spoke about that. And that was good for them. You know, for years I would say, you know, look at these people have these horses, they don't ride. For years, I would say that. Why don't they ride? I don't understand. How could someone just have a horse and lead it around, or just come down and brush it? And then I had a conversation with John Lyons, and he made sense to me, because he said, Sonny, sometimes that's what they need, and that's all they need.
Right. I had a lady teach me that lesson in 1980. I was doing a clinic in Grand Junction, and this lady comes and she's just observing. And so, you know, at the end of the first day, I think I had 10 or 15, I don't remember, it's not important, unbroke horses there. And so at the end of the first day, she comes up to me and she says that she had bought this yearling, weanling, and that would I come over to her place, drive across Grand Junction, and then put it in a trailer and take it across town to another place where she was going to board it. And she said what happened is it was not halter broke. These two cowboys were going to halter break it for her, and it ended up in a big fight. They threw the horse down. They were sitting on its head. She was crying, you know, and yelling at him to get off her horse. And so would I come over, halter break the horse, and haul it? Well, I thought, well, she won't be here at the end of the clinic, 5-day clinic. She won't be here. And I said, well, sure, I'll do that. I'll come help you. If you're still here on the 5th day, I'll come help you do it. Yeah, fifth day she was still there, you know. I wasn't going to get out of it. Right? So, so I started to follow her across town to where this horse was. Well, she turns like she's going to get on the freeway, but then just real quick she pulls off to the side. So the freeway ramp is right here, and she's pulled off by this barbed wire fence, you know, in this long lane of trees. And so I'm thinking, I'm going to have to load this horse that's not halter broke, you know, and load it on this trailer right on the
Freeway.
you know, access road or the ramp road to the freeway. I don't want to do this. I really don't want to do this. But I get out and I start following her. Well, we end up at this little barn, walking wise, and this corral. And so I'm looking at this corral. This corral is hooked to a 10-acre pasture. And the gate looks like a picture frame. That is all it is. All this horse has to do is duck its head, go out in this picture frame. It's going to be in 10 acres. I'm thinking I'm going to have to get zip out of the trailer. I'm going to have to get rope out. I'm going to have to rope this thing. You know, I really don't want to do this. And so she's picking up on it by now. And she said, oh, let me show you how it's halter broke. Well, I thought that it wasn't halter broke. So she goes out. She sits down on this milk stool that she's got by this feed bucket, and she sticks the halter in the feed bucket. And what she's been doing is evidently feeding this horse in this feed bucket and putting the halter off and on this horse, and that is halter broke. Okay?
Okay.
So, of course, the horse comes over. The horse comes over, sticks his head down in the feed bucket, but there's no feed. So she doesn't get the halter all the way on. Now it's halfway on. Now the horse takes off and it's dragging her around, you know, this dirt corral. And finally, of course, you know, she has to let go, and so she gets up and she's crying and she's got mud streaks going down her face. And of course, I do what any good, knowledgeable horse person would do. Wouldn't it be better off? Wouldn't you be better off? This is your first horse. I understand that. But wouldn't you be so much better off getting a horse that's already halter broke? That's already broke to ride, because you're going to have to introduce the saddle blanket the first time. You're going to have to introduce the saddle for the first time, climbing on the horse the first time, taking it across the fields. Wouldn't you be so much better off, you know, starting with a horse that already knows everything that you want it to do? I'm doing a great job. I just know I'm doing a great job. And she looks at me and she says, John, do I have to ride it? And it was like hitting me with a sledgehammer, you know, and I thought, how many people and how many horses would be so much better off if they never rode them, you know? And she is the person in 1980 who taught me that people have horses for different reasons. It's not, they don't have to match my reasons, you know? And so over the years, I learned that over and over again, that if a person has a horse and all they're doing is looking at that horse outside their kitchen window, and that horse is filling a need in that person's life. If they have a horse and that horse is 10 miles from their place, and they only see it once in a while, but they know that they're taking care of it and the horse is taken care of, that horse is filling a need in purpose in that person's life. I found that I could fix the horse. Somebody could bring us a horse to a clinic. I could fix the horse and still have a dissatisfied customer. I mean, why? Why would I have a dissatisfied customer? If you said to me, I want my horse to be able to do this, and my horse is doing this behavior and that behavior, and that's bad, and I could fix it, well, why wouldn't you be satisfied? Because I didn't listen. I didn't listen to the person. I didn't find out what need was it that this horse is fulfilling in this person's life, you know? And so as clinicians, we have to learn to listen. We have to learn to find out why. What is the reason this person has this horse for? You know, fix the horse, fulfill the need. You know, listen to that person and what they want.
Speaking of listening, when I met you 10 years ago, there was something that you told me, and there was a disagreement between a couple of horse people. And I want to see if you remember the story you told me, but you said, like, you guys just have to figure it out. So you said that's all there is to it. You got to figure it out. And you told me a story about a neighbor you had. Does this ring a bell?
Well, keep going.
And basically, there was some type of conflict between you and that neighbor. And I can't remember what specifically the conflict was. But you said, you know, we were upset, I was upset, the neighbor was upset. And basically, I talked to him and I said, hey, we're going to be neighbors.
Oh, Henry John Bolton was his name. You know, and he had a hook like a pirate.
Oh, really?
That's right. I forgot about that part. That's right.
Yeah. He got it cut in a baler. Got his hand cut off as a baler, in a baler. And so he was the one that taught me the lesson, you know. And he said, and I just named him Henry John because he was Henry. But he said, you know, he came to teach me how to irrigate, you know, on these fields because I didn't know how to irrigate. So I'm doing it like he said. He comes back the next day, and what happens is there's more water in the ditch than there was the day before. So I took and used it and just strung the water out further like I'm supposed to do. He comes back, he comes flying down the road, and dust is flying everywhere. He hits those brakes, and it was the most beautiful slide and stop. You know, I mean, it was good. And so he jumps out of that truck, and he is hotter than a pistol. What are you doing? I don't know. I just did what you told me. You're taking all this water. Now I don't have any water down here in my ranch. And in Colorado, there's no good fights like water fights, you know. Shovels and ranchers come out together, and it's going to be a fight. And so he said, you know, he said, no matter how mad I get at you, we're always going to be neighbors. And we're going to be neighbors. And we will fight. We'll just do a knockdown, drag-out fight until we like each other again. But we're going to fight. So, yeah, Henry John Bolton is his name. He's just a terrific guy.
It's amazing
I love
that, I mean, over the years, you've said things to me, and I've repeated them to you. John, remember you told me this? And it's amazing how many years later was it?
Yeah, so 10 years ago.
10 years ago, that's the impact. Your words impact people so much. Even the smallest lessons that, you know, I heard from you 15 years ago. You would say something and I would listen to it and remember. And to this day, it still stays with me because it was so, besides being wise, it was so pure and true that those are the things that stay with you.
And you act on them. Because there's a difference between hearing something, like, oh, that's really good, and whether you actually act on it.
Right.
And so when you told me that story, I was preaching a funeral this is like maybe 6 months later. And that particular person was there. And it was for a mutual friend of ours. And I heard your words like, we're going to be neighbors. And so even though we had that conflict, I went, put my hand around them, and we talked, and we made up. And like, I attribute that to you, John, because very specifically, like, I'm paraphrasing, but you're like, this is stupid. Like, this is stupid. Life is too short.
Right. It is too short, you know. And most of the things with our husbands or with our wives, you know, we carry them way too long. We argue way too long when really it's not important. And so one of the things we can always ask, whether it's our husband or our wife, and ask ourselves or our kids, is how important is this anyway? Is this going to make any difference in 6 months? Is it going to make any difference in a week? Is it going to make a difference in 3 or 4 years? And so it's learning to pick and choose what you want to argue about, what you want to disagree about. We can walk by that bedroom, and it can be just piled with kids' clothes and everything and just a mess. We can close the door and we can ask ourselves, how important is this going to be anyway? Is it worth causing a fight, and hurt feelings and everything else over this messy room? Or can I turn it into something fun? Can I go get some balloons, put them in the room and say, hey, we're going to have a party together. We're going to do a cleanup party. There's ways to get it done, that take the tension out of it. And there's ways to ask yourself before you ever get into those things, how important is this anyway? Is it really worth, asking the question that we know is going to upset our wife? Why would I do that? If I know that if I ask Jody a question, maybe it's a question related to one of our kids, but if I ask her that question, it's going to hurt her feelings. It's going to bother her. It's going to make her think differently, right? And so it's going to take some enjoyment out of her day. How important is it for me to either be right, think I'm right, or ask that question anyway? And so it's learning to guard our words, to be very, very careful in how we guard our words, what we say, how we pick and choose, what is worth making the point over. So our words are critical. In James it says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. That is so simple a statement. And it seems so easy. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Well, a lot of times we relate that to our kids. If I say no, it means no, right? Period. But the statement in the Bible means way more than that. It's if I say yes, whether I've signed an agreement, whether I've said it casually, if you ask me to do something on Wednesday and da-da-da-da-da, and I casually say yes, it means I've committed myself to that yes. And if I know that I've committed myself, then I'm more careful of when I say yes. And so it's not only learning that you keep your word, no matter what the cost. Maybe you ask me to do something on Wednesday, but something else comes up on Wednesday that's a much better deal for me. Maybe I won a bucket load of money in the lottery, and if I don't get it on Wednesday, I lose it. Well, it doesn't make any difference. If I told you yes, then it means yes, no matter what else comes up. So if I knew that, going into saying yes, then I'm very, very careful what I say yes to. So that's really what that Bible verse is all about. It's being a handshake. The idea of a handshake between cowboys or between ranchers or, people is that's your bond, that's your word, right? Yellowstone, you ride for the brand, and so you are the brand. If you say yes to something, then you commit to it. And just because something else comes up that's better for you, it's a better deal, it doesn't make any difference. Your yes is yes. So what that does for us is that teaches us to be very, very careful in what we agree to. Just in a light conversation. Sonny says, hey, will you come over on Friday and help me? If I say yes, if I agree to that, then no matter what, no matter how he asks it, I said yes. I have to keep my word for it, because that yes is tied to my word in everything that I do.
And it directly translates to our horsemanship and how we communicate with our horses, because I feel like a lot of times we're so kind of willy-nilly. It's easy to be willy-nilly with a horse and not have your yes mean yes and your no be no. And our horses love that clarity, and people do too. Just knowing where do I stand? What are we committed to? Are we not? Let's just have that conversation and have that type of candor, because I feel like we kind of parse things, we're too afraid of hurting people's feelings or whatever. And not that we don't want to be mindful of that, but it's so important to just speak those words and stay true to them. I feel like. Speaking of Yellowstone, by the way, we need to see you in an episode of
The what now?
They need to get you in an episode of Yellowstone, and so we need to make sure that anybody watching this comments that, like, get John in Yellowstone, 100%. 100%.
Sometimes I'm out there with my horse, and we were talking about Zip, and my sis is like your Zip to you. I've had her since she's a baby, and she's 20 now, and she's been through my best times and brought me through and my worst. I always say, without her, I'm just Sonny. But sometimes when I'm with her, I think to myself, what would I say to her at the end of the day? Would I say, hey, sis, I know I did you wrong sometimes. I know I wasn't as patient as I should be every time with you. Are you okay with that? Did I do right by you? And it sounds a little corny maybe, but sometimes I look at my horse and I think that, what would she say to me? Sonny, you did okay? You did good for me? Because like we all know, John Lyons is John Lyons, but Zip was a very big part of your career. Everybody knew Zip. It's just the way it was. You can't say John Lyons. I just spoke to a lady the other day. She's like, oh yeah, I loved Zip, And what would you say to him if he was here today and would you ask him, hey, did I do okay with you? What would you say to him, John?
I wouldn't say that. I'd be afraid all the things he would remember that I did do that weren't so good, But I think what he would say, honestly, is he would say, I knew your heart, No, your actions weren't always perfect, but God put in him, what God put in him was forgiveness. What God put in him was knowledge, And so if he has that knowledge and he has the forgiveness, he understands not that everything that I did was right, because it couldn't possibly be, but he would say, we're still friends. We are friends. We had this relationship. We have this relationship. It's not going to go away. If anything, it's just going to get better as we're in heaven, but he's not going to hold, they don't hold resentment. He's not going to hold resentment here on earth, and he's not going to hold resentment in heaven for sure. So we can have confidence when we go forward, and we know when we're going to be in heaven that relationship is not only going to be as good, but it's going to be way better than what we had here, And he's going to remember what he's going to say, Sonny. He's going to remember the good times. He's going to remember the times that we were in the mountains and we're chasing cattle and we're doing crazy things. He's going to remind me of the time that I branded my calves too deeply, and they all ended up with burn holes in their sides, and they all ended up with maggots, and I had to go up. The pool rider, the cowboy up in the mountains, he didn't have time to go rope 150 calves and cows, another 150 cows and 6 bulls, and put pine tar on them and maggot spray in their side. And so I was by myself. And so here I go, and I go up in the mountains. And so he's going to remind me the time that we're chasing this calf, and we went down we were coming down this hill, this pretty steep hill, and at the bottom of them was a big bog, and and we laid it in that bog full speed and just buried him to his belly and deeper, and how hard it was to get out of there. And then I finally get him out and start chasing that calf again, and we do it twice, you know. So he'll remind me of some of those times that we went through together. He'll remind me of the time that I had to rope the bull, or one of the bulls, and so the bull had hoof rot on him, you know, and so I roped this bull and I caught him around the neck rather than around the horns, and I was tied hard and fast, you know, to the saddle because I'm working by myself, and this bull rips the front of the saddle, you know, the whole swells out of the saddle, the whole thing just ripped it out of the saddle, you know, and I'm thinking, holy buckets, how am I going to get home? I'm 20 miles from home. And so I cut the saddle strings, tied the tree together, you know, got a hold of the rope, got the rope off of the bull, and I still have that saddle, the front of that saddle. So he'll laugh about those things and the nights that we went together, and I had to cab out cows and I carried a flashlight. As a roper, you'll appreciate this. And so I get out there late one afternoon, and here are these calves, and this cow's having this calf, and it's breech, you know, the feet are turned up. So I always carried 2 lariat ropes with me. And so I roped the cow and tied her hard and fast to zip, and then I got around behind the cow and took some baling twine and tied the calf's feet together. All right, so you just barely got these feet coming out of the back end of this cow. Well, I took the second rope and then looped it around the baling twine, and then took it to Zip where he was, and then undid the first rope and took the second rope. So now I've got Zip holding this calf, you know, that's inside this cow. I'm holding under her tail, kind of pushing down on the rope. So he just got to pull back just enough, you know, that I can put pressure on that rope. Right. But I always wanted to take a picture of it, but there weren't cell phones in those days. I was going to tell the ropers, I caught that calf just before it got away.
John, do you think horses, you know, we have our dogs, you know, and we love our dogs. I'm a dog guy, you're a dog guy. And I feel like my dog loved me, you know. My dog just loved me. Do you think horses, did you feel love from Zip? I know it's a different love. I feel like it's a different love. But, you know, sometimes I feel like the connection I have with my horse is definitely different than a dog. But did you feel that love from Zip? Or was it like, well, John, I'm your partner and this is what we do? Or did you feel closeness?
The closeness, yes. You know, the relationship, the friendship, yes. Whether that would equate to the same type of a feeling that a dog gives us, no. God made the horse adaptable, all right? I could not sell my dog. My dog, you know, I love my dog. I think my dog loves me. My horse, you know, God made him adaptable. He made him changeable. To a horse, we represent all mankind. We don't represent one person. A dog has an owner. They have a master, all right? A horse does not have an owner. It never has an owner in its life. You know, Zip was my friend, but I was never his master. I was never his owner. And so our relationship was amazingly close, just like yours and Sis. You know, people would tell me, you know, when I would fly home and stay gone for a week, I'd be on the road doing symposiums and clinics, and I would leave Zip with some people for a week. I've had multiple times that people would tell me he was fine all week, but they could tell almost the moment that I climbed on the plane. I don't know if I believe that kind of stuff or not, but I had it happen so many times with people who didn't know each other, you know, that would tell me that horse just knew me. I know one time I left him up here and this part of the country somewhere with some people, good people. And I got off of the plane and went to where he was, and I just touched him, and I said, well, how long has his neck been swollen? Well, they didn't know his neck was swollen at all, but I could tell there was something in his throat. And of course we called the vet. The vet came out, and there was something, some hay or something that was stuck in his throat that he hadn't been eating for a day or two, and because his throat was clogged. And the vet just said to him, he said, I don't know how anybody could pick that out, could tell that horse's neck was swollen right there. So we became like many, many horse people, and their horses, their favorite horses, the horses that they live with and stay with and are a part of. Like many of the endurance riders, I can equate it to that, where they do the Tevis Cup, or they do all these miles upon miles. They do 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 miles on that horse, and they get to know that horse. They get to know his breathing. They get to, through the saddle, they can feel his heartbeat. So I don't know. I can't say for sure, that horses love us. My kids every one of them will fight me on that. I'm
on their side. I'm on their side.
And it's okay. I just can't convince myself of that because, again, if we believe that, then we would have to recognize that if we sold a horse and he did love us, that would really be a betrayal, wouldn't it? Yeah. But there's a lot of people that need to sell that horse, for reasons, a multitude of reasons, from finances to family situation, all kinds of different things. And I don't want those people to worry, that they're doing something that is wrong, something that they should not do. I want people to be at peace, knowing that horse, that God made him so adaptable.
But John, sometimes too, like in our lives with some relationships, right? There's some relationships where it doesn't necessarily mean that the relationship is for naught, but like that relationship changes. That person goes on, it evolves, it's different. They might, or like with a child, they might leave the home or get married, and you know what I'm saying. And so, and I hear you, but I also feel, and I didn't used to think this way. I used to think, oh, people are silly. Your horse doesn't love you. They just love the treats you're.
Right.
That's honestly how I used to feel. But that changed. So I used to train carriages, and when I was training carriage horses, I used to drive. Right. And the amount of time you spend with those horses, oh man, it's a lot. It is a lot, because you're driving 5-6 days a week, and you're working with those horses. This is going to sound terrible, but there is one summer where I lost my grandmother and I lost my horse. And I lost my grandmother, and I was sad, and I cried, and, I grieved. When I lost my horse, it was very unexpected, and I felt so guilty for this. And I got the phone call, and they said, Reno died. And I lost it. I mean, I'm tearing up now. I mean, I lost it. I mean, snot, nasty, just lost it. And I think a lot of it is, and maybe it's not love, but that's how we kind of characterize it. But a lot of it is that time and commitment that you pour in and you invest that you never get back. Especially like when I was training horses for a living, like that was just always so hard for me, because it's like, man, we've been together, and I would train them for a long time, 6-8 months, a year, and it's like, man, this hurts.
It's hard. It's hard to let go, and Jesus loves us, and he says, I love you, right? He says the Father loves you as I love you, right?
Yeah.
But he also says, that you are my friend. Says, if you recognize me as your friend, then I will recognize you as my friend to my Father, right? Many, many times over, he mentions in the New Testament the word friend. I want to be your friend. Now, with that, he gave us that same friendship with the horse. He gave us that friendship. I don't know, it's not that it couldn't happen, that it hasn't happened, but I would say it's extremely rare that a horse goes through a depression, over a person when he has been sold to another person who takes care of him, not changes their environment so much. They still get fed, they're still taken care of, they're still with people. I don't see horses going through that depression, that loss of that friend, And again, so I don't equate it to love. I've taught my horses, I've taught my horse to run to me, and I had, like with Zip or Preacher or Seattle, Trouble, any of those horses, they would come to me in a straight line, at a dead run.
Because they love you, John. Don't ruin this for us.
No. My kids would say yes. My kids, if you interviewed Brandy, you both would be on the floor fighting, because she would say, that horse loved my dad, and Josh would say the same thing, But what I do know is if I put you 10 feet, if I put my horses 200 feet away at the far end of the arena, and I put you 10 feet to the side, and I called them, they would go to you first. They would go directly to you. And so what that told me was that I'm not their owner. I am not their master. I only represent all mankind to those horses. That's why I would never train a horse or work with a horse unless the owner was standing there. Because I want that owner to see what that horse is going through to make those changes. And what I'm representing to that horse, I'm telling that horse that all mankind has changed. Every person in the world has changed. They will not do what has been done to you. And I feel that would be, for me, not for anybody else. I don't, everybody has to answer for themselves and what they feel is right or feel is wrong. But for me, I can't tell that horse I'm going to do that or that all mankind has changed if their owner's not standing right there and watching. I can't make the owner do it. I can't make the owner, change what they have been doing in the past, but hopefully at least I can show them what this horse had to do, the changes that the horse had to make, what I did to that horse to have that horse change his behavior. So
fair enough.
I think I don't ever own him. I wrote about Zip, after he died. I wrote about him and I said he belongs to God. I feel like what we are, what I am, is just God's stable hand. He loans me these horses. It's my responsibility to take care of them. They're not my horses. They're his horses, And someday I'm going to have to stand in front of him, which is worse than Zip. I'm going to have to stand in front of him and tell him why I did certain things to horses. Now, he's going to forgive me. Every time that I did something that I didn't know was wrong, or that I shouldn't do to that horse. But then he's going to say to me, he's going to look at me and he's say, John, remember that day? You knew better that day. You knew you shouldn't have been doing that to a horse. Why did you do it then? He's going to let me out of it, but he's going to dig it in just a little bit. He's going to say, you shouldn't have done that, John. You knew that was my horse. You shouldn't have done that.
And that's one of the things you say, I've always heard John say, I would never do something with a horse that I wouldn't do in front of God.
100%. 100%. Or do to a child. All we are is kindergarten teachers.
Let me ask you this, because when you talk about your kids, you light up. And especially in farming, ranching, equine world, you find a lot of family businesses torn apart, where there's pressure, where there's whatever, I got to find my own way. Pops doesn't understand me, whatever the case might be. And I'm listening to you and you're talking about like, as a parent, hearing you talk about like, God loaned me these horses and, they're in my charge for this certain amount of time. And then like, talk to me a little bit about that and the family dynamic and what working with family looks like. And like, give us a little bit of that. Like, what does that look like?
Well, we have Michael and Josh and Brandy, all our kids, and all three of them are professional trainers. All three of them do clinics. All three of them do expos and programs, etc.
And your grandsons are pretty good hands too.
Yeah, we got grandkids now. In fact, they have 13, I think maybe 14 grandkids and great grandkids, and so there's lots of families. And I'm a little different than some. I think God created state lines so the kids could live on one side of it and we could live on the other. So it may be a little different, but I find that kind of keeps the family squabbles down a little bit. And so Jody disagrees with that. My wife says we were moving to North Carolina. We were going to play with the grandkids there, the ones that are there, the ones that are coming there. She wants to be a grandma right next to that last grandchild, that we have at the moment. So, okay, we're going to do that. But I find that if I treat my kids more like my best friends, because they're grown, not when they're little, I don't treat them that way, but when they're grown, if I treat them like my best friends, we have a better relationship. If I treat them like my kids, then my expectations are always higher. I always think, and if I'm too involved in their business and their family life, like the financial stuff in their family life, that's not a good thing because I interject my opinion when I shouldn't be. If we were friends, I wouldn't be asking you, well, why did you pay that bill? You shouldn't have gotten that credit card. You should have gotten this one, or that kind of stuff. And that's just overstepping our bounds. And we think we can do that. We think we can say things to our family that there's no way we would say that to a friend. A close friend. And so my rules is if I wouldn't say it to a close friend, I can't say it to my kids. Whenever Jody and I go see our kids, any one of our kids, and we have them in Oklahoma, we have them in Arizona, we have them in Florida, we have them in Pennsylvania, we have them in North Carolina. We have them all over. What we do is we pull, down their street. We get to the mailbox and we stop. And what we repeat to each other is we're not here to fix anything. All we're here to do is to love them. That's all our responsibility is to love them, not fix anything, And so, Jody does it the very best. She is just the most outstanding mom, and grandma. She's amazing. But, she will... they'll tell us something and they'll say, oh, we're going to do this. And we're in our heads, we're bouncing off the walls. We're thinking, oh, no, don't do that. That's going to be such a wreck in your life. Exactly, I'm sure what God is doing when I'm telling him, I'm going to do this, for a while. And he's going, no, And so that's bouncing around in our heads. Don't do that, don't do that. And you really want to give them your great knowledge that you have accumulated over the years. And yet you have to learn to not say a word. And when everything goes bad, and they call you and say, oh man, that was such a wreck. You go, oh, geez, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. And that's it. I feel bad for you that happened to you. But you have to let them live their own life. So if you want great relationships, with your kids, then you have to let them be adults. You have to let them have their own life. You have to let them make the same mistakes that you made. You don't get to say, well, you shouldn't do that because I did that and that's wrong. They're going to do it anyway. They're just going to do it anyway, and pretty soon they don't want to pick up the phone and talk to you. Jody I tell you what a great, great mother she was. Michael, our youngest boy, just got to be a freshman in high school, all right? So he's pretty cool anyway. Now he's playing football, all right? So now he's a freshman and he is playing football. He is cool, right? Freshman attitude, he is cool. So we have an excursion at that time, an old excursion, and the back seats were down. So Jody's picking him up at the high school, all right? And they just finished football practice and all of that. And then our Mike's friend, which is also named Michael, he's in the back of the excursion. And the seats are down, all right? So it's all flat. So our Michael says to Jody, take us to Wendy's, we're hungry. Jody slams on the brakes. She hasn't hit the front of the school gate yet. She slams on the brake. Michael hits the windshield. Michael in the back rolls up, hits the back seat. She says, "Get out of this car. You're not my son. Get out of this car. My son wouldn't say that to me. Get out of this car." And then the boys go, "Whoa, Mom's having a bad day here." And so they kind of laugh, and they calm down a little bit. And so she starts off slow again. He says, "Mom, take us to Wendy's." Slams on the brakes. "Get out of here. You're an imposter. You're not my son. My son would not get in the car and say that to me. My son would get in the car and say, 'Hi, Mom. How was your day? What did you do today? You're an imposter. Get out of here.'" Well, now both the boys are laughing pretty good. So, Michael says, "Okay, hi, Mom, how was your day? What did you do today?" So then she goes into this long orientation of everything she did that day, right? And drug it out. And then she finally gets done, and he says, "Now can we go to Wendy's?" She said, "Nope." And goes on. And how she comes up with that stuff, is just amazing, because I just want to backhand them, I just want to nail them, and so, because that's how I was brought up. You didn't do that stuff. You didn't do that kind of stuff to your parents, and so we're, I react one way, she reacts the other. And we end up both of us bring an equal amount to the table, and we do good. Jody taught me, and this is a really hard lesson, when Jody and I got together 23 years ago, I had a big business, I had a good sized business, and after we'd been together for a little while, she says, nobody's right 100% of the time. Well, of course I am. Of course I'm right. I have to be right. I run this big business. I have to be right. I do this stuff. I have to be right. No, nobody can be right 100% of the time. You only get to be right 50% of the time. What are you talking about? I can't be right. That's failure. I can't just be right 50% of the time. She said, "Nope. You can only be right 50% of the time. And it's only when it's your turn to be right." Said, so you get a turn to be right, and then I get a turn to be right. Okay. And sometimes it's my turn to be right, sometimes it's your turn to be right. All right? And it's just whoever's turn it is to be right. But okay. Well, in my own mind, I justified it. And it works really, really well. It's a great rule in marriage, But how I justify it, well, if it's her turn to be right, that doesn't make me wrong. It's just her turn to be right. So that rule stops so many arguments. We just say, okay, we disagree, whose turn is it? Whose turn is it to be right? And really, doesn't matter anyway. Is it going to make any difference in a week or a month or a year? Is it going to make any difference? And so it just stops so many disagreements, on who's more right or who's going to get their turn. I have learned that it seems like Jody gets more turns to be right than I do.
Maybe 60%. Maybe 60%.
But who's counting, right?
John, if you had to give advice, we're both young horsemen in the industry. You've been around forever. You're John Lyons. You're an icon. What advice would you give us as far as going forward in the industry?
Well, the advice is simply to be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else. Don't try to be something that you're not. Don't try to either trick people or fool them into what you don't know and you're trying to guess at and what you don't know that day. The key is that we're not here to help everybody. World champions many times don't want any help. That's not who comes to us that wants help. It's people, it's ordinary, everyday lovers of horses. Our job is simply to be of help, just to be of help to people. What is it that they want help with? What is it that they really need help with their horses? Well, they want a trail ride. They want to be comfortable. They want to show, but they're not really interested in being world champion showers. They want to have that friendship without the horse stepping on them. They want to have that friendship without the horse kicking. They want the horse to want to see them come to the barn. So our job isn't necessarily like a glamorous one. It's not the horse whisperer concept. We're really cool and we know these special things and that we're really neat. Our job is to help. Simply help people find what they want in their life and with their horse life. The next thing is that, Jesus wasn't respected in his own town. He said a prophet is only a prophet when they're further away. So being a clinician is an extremely hard life. It's a hard life on a family. Very few clinicians that started out, are even still married, to the same person. And it's the reason because it's so hard on the family. It's not that the clinicians are bad, and it's not that the clinicians' mates were bad. It's just simply, you're just gone all the time. And it's really, really difficult on both parties. So you have to learn to manage that part of it. And you have to, people say, for an example, like, word of mouth is the best advertising. It's the worst advertising. And the reason it's the worst advertising is it doesn't go very far. You have to put dollars back, and you obviously can't start with $100,000 in your pocket and advertise, but somehow you have to find ways to get the word out there. A few years ago, I designed a tour that really worked well, and financially it could have been extremely good if we would just kept doing it a longer period of time. But it's coming in. You do 2 programs a day, one in the morning, say 10 o'clock in the morning, one at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and you pick an area like Phoenix or Pittsburgh or any major town, any town, and you call every stable in that town, every place that boards horses, and you say, I'll be there. I can come on Tuesday morning or Monday morning or Saturday morning, whatever, at 10 o'clock, and I'll be at your place, and would you put out flyers around your area that I'm coming? I'll try to help your boarders, et cetera, and get them more interested in coming, to the facility, because that's what those facilities want. They want their boarders to come out and play with their horses. They want their boarders to come out and use their horses, do something with their horses. So they're always trying to find ways to motivate people to come out and play with their horses. So, what you have something to offer that facility. Number one, people in the area, they have a chance to advertise to other people in that surrounding area, that you're going to be there. They're going to have this special person come in, this special trainer come in, this special clinician come in, and do this 2-hour program. Answer questions, do demonstrations, or maybe, and that's really all it needs to be, 2.5 hour program. Then, so you do that one, and then after that, you answer questions, you do your stuff there, and then you have another one scheduled at another place that afternoon at 3 o'clock or 7 o'clock that night, whatever, it depends on the season. And at another facility, maybe 30 miles away, 20 miles away. Doesn't have to be very far, so it's not hard on you to get there. You're not spending a lot of money in gas, and et cetera. And you could do that, like you could spend 5 days in Phoenix, hit, in the surrounding area, and hit 10 different places, and collect, let's say you charge $25 or $30, and you get 300 people, or excuse me, you get 10 people there. Well, you got $300. Now you're still going to make another $300, let's hopefully, or more, in that afternoon. So now you got $600 in your pocket for that day. You've met and talked to a lot of different people. You add that up, and now you've got $3,000 for the week. If you take 2 days off, you still have $3,000. Now, all of a sudden, your cost, you're starting to be able to do something with your cost. The expenses, and you're also being able to get your name out there, but you're not having to advertise and spend thousands upon thousands of dollars in advertisement. So if you were starting young, starting out, you want, or anytime, even, like you've said, you've been doing this for 15, 16, 17 years. And so that would be a good way to start to build your business and go a little bit further and a little bit further and reach out and develop that core business, in different states and different towns. So that would be a thought. I'm not the wizard at it. I try to come up with ideas of how, how we can build a business, do it in a good manner where we're providing a service. People don't mind. People do not mind paying if they have a value, if they get a value for that. So, the service is, we're in the service industry. That's what we're in. And we're trying to give, a service, a value for something that people want or need.
But something was different, right? Because there's only a handful of guys. And John Lyons was at one time, you were the top of the ring, doing, probably 30 clinics a year or more. What takes an average, and you're not an average guy, but what takes a horseman? It wasn't just your skills that got you to the point where you were worldwide. It wasn't, well, he's a great horseman. There's a lot of great horsemen. It wasn't your demeanor. You have a great demeanor. But it wasn't just that. What was it that brought John Lyons to that plateau where he's going to Belgium to do clinics, and he's going all over the world? You weren't just working in, the Northwest, or you weren't just working on the West Coast. John Lyons was everywhere. Everyone knew. You know what I'm saying?
I think too, like, people smell BS, and you're an authentic person, and you don't see a lot of authenticity. because a lot of people are posturing, pretending, trying to be something. And I think it goes back to the very original thing you said of like just being who God made you, like being yourself, not trying to be more than and you know, you talked about those programs. Like, I think it was a program like that where I met you. And it was very, you know, just sitting around the round pen, local horse folks who maybe would never be able to make it out to like one of your bigger venues or something like that. But you took the time afterwards, like for hours, just hanging out, talking to people, sharing stories, just pouring out and really loving on people, because that's when you give people attention like that, that's what that is. You know, loving on people and connecting with people in a way that's meaningful. And I think from what I gather and my experiences with you, John, is that is so powerful and something that everybody, I have never, ever met a horse person that said something bad about you. Never.
Well, they must not know me.
And to be doing this as long as you have, not that we don't make mistakes, everybody's human, right? Like we get that, right? Everybody's human. But to be doing this as long as you have, and to still be America's most trusted horseman, that says something. It really does.
And you know what's the most amazing thing about John Lyons, and I tell people this all the time, you will never find a more humble guy at that level. No one. I know them all. Not one, and I have very good friends, some of them. No one is as humble. I'll give you an example. I did the expo one year, and John was there with Josh, and I'm doing my demo. And you could imagine the thrill that I had. I had a packed crowd. And I look out into the audience, and who do I see? John and Josh sitting in the audience, watching my demo. Now, this guy is my hero. For him to be sitting in my demo, watching the demo, it was the highlight of my year. But what was even better, when he came out, I came out of the ring, and I met up with John. I don't know if he remembers this. I said, John, I just want to tell you that it was amazing. You know, I really appreciate you. I actually pointed them out in my demo, you know, but I said it was really amazing that, you know, you would sit here for my demo. And his words were, and he said this to me more than once. He said, he actually complimented my horsemanship this morning, but he said, Sonny, I'm no better than you. We're all, you know, we're all learning. And I said, John, I've never disagreed with John Lyons with anything he's ever said in 23 years of me working horses, but I have to disagree with you here. You are better than me. But his humility is staggering for a guy at his level. It's just, and he never veers from it. Never. And some of those guys are not humble at all. John has been, and I say this all, I tell people are coming to his clinics. We're doing 2 clinics this weekend on Long Island. And I tell people, do you know John? No, I've never, of course I know John Lyons, but I don't know John. I said, when you meet John, you will never forget John. Because never. Because he is so knowledgeable, and the way he presents his knowledge, like we were talking before, he said something, you're like, wow. He's so knowledgeable in the way he presents it, and his humility behind that knowledge. He never made me, he's been here a couple days. He helped me work a couple horses, right? One of the things he said was, Sonny, I hope I'm not stepping on your toes. Now, how could John Lyons step on my toes? For me, that was a gift. It was a gift. John, you could never step on my toes. You could step into my lesson anytime, because I'm more than happy to step back and watch you, because I'm learning something for sure, right? But for me to be able to work next to the guy who's, and I know he hates when I say stuff like this because he's so humble, but who's my hero. This guy is my inspiration from day one. My whole program has been, and I'm not a Lyons certified trainer or anything like that, But I followed John for 23 years. And from day one, I said, I want to be like him. I want to be like him. Because his love and respect for the horse, his humility, and it was hard for me to be humble at times. I was not. Sometimes I would be very not happy with some people, and I would lash out. Sometimes I would say, "This guy, who is this guy? He's going to tell me how to work a horse." But it always came back for me with him in my head, saying, "Be humble, always be humble." I'm no better than you. We're all trying to learn. Even though I didn't believe it, I always believed he was the greatest in the world. But it always came back to that for me. Like, take a step back, Sonny. Listen to this person. Maybe you'll learn something. Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll learn something you don't want to do. But don't ever think you're better than anyone else. And I prided my horsemanship on that and patience. And I know John says one of the things you say is we're not any more patient than anyone else. We just, as professionals, we see the progression a little easier than someone would. I believe that to a point, but I know how I am. I'm known for patience. And it's not just a progression. For me, it's the respect for the horse. I'm never going to disrespect the horse. And my patience reflects that. Like, I'm never going to get emotional with the horse, never going to get angry with the horse. I always know inside that horse never asked to be here. So whatever I'm putting him through is because I'm doing it. He's feeling that way because of me. And I remember that. And that all stems from this man right here. Because even though he maybe never said those words to me, his philosophy is that. His belief is that. And he's not a guy, and I told this to my fiance Stacy this weekend. I said, Stacy, there's a lot of guys that are one way here, and behind the barn they're a different way. You're never going to get that with John Lyons. He's who he is. Whatever you see is what he is. If you think, oh, this guy, come on, how could somebody be so kind to this horse? And like we had a discussion, which turned my program around this weekend for me. Johnny, don't ever scold the horse. Don't scold him. And he'll explain it much better than me. But, I was the guy, hey, if there's a problem, the horse is giving me a problem, I got to correct that. We had a horse that was nipping. And John asked me, how would you fix this? He never said, you're doing it wrong. Never said that to me. He said, how would you fix this? I said, well, I certainly wouldn't do what I used to do, annoy them back, because then it becomes a game, John. I would probably take the tail of the lead, and as he came to nip me, I'd smack him in the muzzle hard, so he wouldn't want to come back this way. And he said, no. He says, that may work, but let me tell you the way I do it. Maybe it works for you. And I'm paraphrasing, of course. And he showed me a different way. Stop focusing on, John, you'll explain it better, but stop focusing on that. Forget about the nipping. We're just going to give him another job. We're going to focus on what we really want. We're going to work at the positive. And why it changed me so much is because I wrote an article, it's on my website still, about positive and negative reinforcement and how we need to use both with horses because that's how the horses deal with each other in the herd. That's what the horse understands. He understands negative also, because that's what another horse would do with him. Horse gets in his way, he's going to kick him. But I'm not a horse. I'm a horseman. So when John said that, like a light bulb clicked in my head and said, yeah, wait a minute. It just made sense. Like, why would I scold this? Why would I punish this horse when I could just redirect this and do something positive with him? And at the same time, I'm making something better.
And I feel like it takes us completely full circle. Taking that horse's bad behavior and changing it into an opportunity to show that horse, like, you can get peace. Like, you can experience that peace that you're looking for, and I can help facilitate that, and it's a positive thing. There's no reason for me to scold you or get upset or any of that. And John, I've got to say, like, I know that we speak for many, many people in the horse industry when we say that, you have been a breath of fresh air for years. For when, like you said, sometimes it's the case that in front of the cameras we're one way, behind the barn we're another way. And again, not to say, nobody's saying you're perfect. I'm sure you have your moments. We all do.
You can just ask Jody. She'll tell you. There's no way that this boy is perfect. But she loves me, so that's a cool thing.
And so does this industry. We love you, man. And we're so grateful for you. And I can't thank you enough for taking so much time to be with us and to spend time just kind of pouring out and sharing, because you offer, like you said, you offer so much value, and it's so incredible. So I thank you for that. And I'm going to ask you one last question, if I may. What would you say makes a great horseman?
Desire to learn and work ethic. The desire to learn, because no one knows the right way to train a horse yet. We don't know how to train them. We stumble around. The very best of the horsemen in the world, the very best of us, are just stumbling around doing our very best. Whatever method we're using today that works, there's a better way to teach it. There's a better way to use it. And so, not to get stuck on a method, that works great for you today, because no matter how great it works, there's still a better method to use it. So there's always something more to learn. It's a lifelong process, and if we had 4 lifetimes, we couldn't really finish out understanding how to work with these things, or the right ways to work with our horses. So I think that, it takes that desire to want to improve. And I told people back in 1980 when I started the clinics that if you come to a clinic, you ride in a clinic, or you observe a clinic, and you come back in 6 months, if I'm doing it the same way, don't ever come back again. Because you want to learn from somebody who's learning, not somebody who knows it all, from somebody who's learning, who's struggling and has the same feelings that you have, the same feelings of inadequacy that we all have. That's the trainer you want to learn from, because he's still struggling to learn. He can still relate to you. He can still understand that there's other people that can do more, do better, maybe not in everything that they do, but in some things. There's still better trainers, and those better trainers should inspire us, as clinicians or people, that we can do better. There's better ways. There's always a better way. And then, the next thing, requirement from a clinician is work ethic. You can't give up. Ken McNabb has been working with me since he was 16 years old, and he's just he is the epitome of stick-to-itiveness. And working hard through really, really hard times, with struggles and money, struggles and time, and he is one of the most solid, consistent Christian hard work ethic people that I know of, and he'll be the first to tell you, I would imagine, that he's not the best trainer in the world. But what he is most dedicated to his people, dedicated to people that he teaches, dedicated to his family, and dedicated mostly to his Father in heaven. So it takes that type of desire. It for sure was not easy, really never easy, for him. But yet, he stuck to it, and he's an amazing young man. And he's just a good role model to follow. And anybody.
And Ken actually said something to me, I was telling you one time, that stuck with me. And I don't know Ken as well as I know you, or even probably as well as I know you. You know, he was my judge in my Mustang challenge. He actually wanted to buy my horse, but he said to me one day, we were doing the expo together, and he said, "Sonny, I want to tell you something." And I sometimes wonder if he remembers him telling me this. He said, "Remember this. No matter how many people are in that Coliseum right now screaming your name, there could be 10,000 people in there screaming your name. 99.9% of the people in the world have no idea who you are. Stay humble." And that, I never forgot that. And I tell people that, and I always credit people that say, I don't take that as my own ever.
Sure.
You know, if John says something, I say, John Lyons told me. And I tell people, Ken McNabb told this to me, and I never forgot it. So when I get into that Coliseum sometimes, and I'm doing those expos, and there's 1,000 people, let's say, I remember Ken telling me that, you know, stay humble. There's a lot of people in the world who have no idea who you are. You know, so you're not, basically, we're not that special. We're just horse guys.
That's right.
Makes sense?
We're privileged to work with them. We really are.
Well, we are, and with the people, and it's important to keep that, you know, in alignment. The horses aren't more important than people. You know, God never ever said that. You know, even though it's his favorite animal, he never said they were more important than people. So hurting the people to help the horse is not the right way to do it. You know, we're caretakers of his people, of his children, and we're also caretakers of the horse. But anybody who insults a person will also insult the horse. You know, I have found that if they're rude to people, they'll be rude to that horse.
That's right.
You know, and so we have to know that people are far more important than horses. You know, horses are important, and they're an important part of our life, for sure. But they're not more important than people, you know.
And we're here, like John told me this morning, we were talking about it, and I agree with him. We're here to help the people. And for me, I'm using the horse. Actually, someone told me this years ago, Sonny, you have this gift. I said, I don't have a gift, it's just hard work. But you have this gift to work with horses, but your real gift from God is not to help the horses. The horses are the tool to help the people. You're here to help people, not the horse.
Every horse trainer, clinician, whether they know it or not, it's a ministry. Ministry just means helping. Right. And like, you know, not to be over dramatic, but like it's no small thing when you're putting yourself out there and you're saying, I'm going to help you. You need to make sure like we're being humble, that we're growing, that we're getting our sustenance from the Father, that we're aware of our shortcomings, but also making sure, like you said, putting the people first. You know, and he said, the greatest commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor like yourself. And I agree with you guys, like, the privilege of working with these horses, I think it does help us to be better neighbors.
Right. And better humans.
There's so many good lessons we can learn from them. You know, there really are a lot of great lessons. One of them is live today. You know, just live today. Don't worry about what's going to happen tomorrow. You know, they teach us to do that. You don't see them fretting about what's going to happen tomorrow, and you don't see them worrying about what happened yesterday. You know, it's how do we live in the moment? And all of us know that. All of us know that, but we have an example in front of us to help teach us and remind us that whatever happened yesterday is yesterday. It's gone. You know, 100%. Today I'm okay. You know, we're worried about World War III, you know, and so, but we can't do anything about it. But we can take an inventory today. We have kids that have issues. We have financial issues. We have all kinds of different things that can bother us, that creep in and steal what we have today. And that horse tells us, don't worry about it. It's not sitting there fretting about, are you going to feed it in a week? It's thinking about today, this moment. So today, am I okay? And yes, the answer to that is yes. God says you're not promised tomorrow. Today I'm okay. I teach people I walk by them and say, better smile now, it's going to get worse. You don't ever miss a chance to smile,
Absolutely.
because you can give that away and it comes back. And it's just important. You don't want to miss that opportunity, to smile, because we're all going to end up in a hospital. We'll end up in a nursing home. We're going to end up somewhere else. And that's what our horses and our dogs and our animals teach us. Life is not forever. It's not forever. We don't have our kids forever, What we have is today. So make the phone call, Make the phone call. Enjoy today. Take an inventory today. Am I hungry? Am I cold? Am I tired? Am I wet? Am I okay? And today at this moment, I'm okay. God has provided every need for me today. And that's all he promised.
Amen. John,
Amen.
thank you.
Oh, you're
Sonny.
Always a pleasure, buddy.
Thanks a ton. Morning, John.
Good morning. How's Noah doing this morning?
Glad to be here with you.
Good.
So we got together this morning, and yesterday when we were talking about do horses love us? Does your horse love you? And from what I understand, you had a hard time sleeping last night.
Well, I did. I woke up at 4 o'clock this morning, and that question was on my mind, and I just thought back, about how I answered it in the past at different times and how I thought of it. And I thought, since, we started talking about, how God made the horse, and it's his most favorite animal, and that he put characteristics in it that he really, really likes and loves. Just like if we were going to do something and we were going to design the very best thing possible, what we liked, whether it was a car or anything else, we would put in that what we really, really liked. And so God did that when he designed the horse. And we talked about that yesterday. And then you hit me with that question, does our horse love us? Well, holy buckets. I mean, that is such a personal question with each individual. And there is no right answer. I don't know the answer. Sure. But as I said yesterday, my kids really argue with me over that, and so does Jody. And I answered that I did not think, that the horse loves us, as like a dog, because the horse doesn't go through, I don't believe it's normal, like a horse goes through a depression after, they go to another place, another owner, etc., or they're not without us, as much as, or as normal as a dog might. All right.
Yeah.
So a dog might really go through, be more consistent in that behavior of going through a depression, missing that owner that much. So, but in the characteristics of a horse, and again, thinking that God designed this horse as his most favorite animal. Well, he loves us, doesn't he? He loves us unconditionally. And that's important to understand that. He loves us unconditionally, whether we love him or not, right? Now, and it's not based on our behaviors. So, and he says that the moment that we're conceived in that mother's womb, that he loves us. So he tells us really when life begins, right? At that moment. So then the baby is formed, the baby, the parents, have the baby. Well, the day that baby is born, that mother takes that baby in her arms and she just exudes love for this child, right? Yeah. The father, you, as you held your baby the very first time, did you not love it?
I can remember it right now, what it felt like. Yeah.
Exactly. It's amazing, the most amazing feeling. But what did that baby do to earn your love?
Nothing.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And what can that baby do to take that love away from you?
Nothing.
Nothing, no matter what it does in its life. Well, the horse, understanding that God's love is unconditional, and it's just something that he gives, all right? When I hold a horse, when you hold a horse, when you hold a horse's head, and we talked about peace yesterday, you know, and we hug that horse, we go in that barn, and we hug that horse, you know, I used to be able to hide. There could be 400 people around the round pen, and the pressures and the questions and all of that would just be never ending. I could go out in the middle of that round pen, and I could hide inside that horse, you know. I could hug that horse, and it's such an amazing feeling of peace, you know, and it's such a deep love within us, you know, for that horse or for that animal. And it doesn't even have to be a horse that, you know, we spend years with, or we, you know, for me sometimes I can spend minutes with them, you know, and I can love them. So it's not based on what they do for me. You know, it's not based on how they react to me, but it's such a sense of peace, right? So here God gives us this animal, and he gives us that connection with it that is so strong within us that we can hug on that horse, and it gives us such a sense of peace, right? It does. Well, then why do we, you know, God doesn't require us to love him first. He doesn't even require us to love him, does he?
It says God so loved the world, didn't say the world that loved him back, the whole world. Yeah.
Exactly. So why do we require that the horse loves us back? You know, why would we demand that, you know, I'm going to love you, but why do you have to love me back just to earn my love? And so the horse, isn't it cool enough? Isn't it great enough, without even answering the question whether the horse loves me or not, he gives me the opportunity to love him and fill my own life with peace. You know, that moment that I get to hug his head, that moment I get to wrap my arms around his neck and put my face against his neck and smell that, is that not enough of a gift for me? You know, does that not make sense? So here, he put in us his love, you know, for the horse, right? Right. And yet the horse is almost like us, you know. He says, you don't make that horse love you first. Don't require that horse to love you. I'm going to give you such a gift, you know, of love for this animal that you'll understand a little bit of my love for you.
I love it.
So anyway, so I wanted to answer it.
So now you, God, that's your persuasion here. Because yesterday I told you I'm on the kid's side. But with that, like, wow. Interesting. So it seems like it's a more complex question.
It is. Than
what it looks like on face value. And I think it's a huge demonstration of the power of God and, like, again, the gift that he gives us with these horses. It's incredible.
Good. Well, now I can go to sleep.
Well, glad to hear it. Thank you, John.
Oh, you're welcome.
You too.